Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're going to dive into a totally fresh take on commercial real estate, and we're looking at it through the lens of one of the most competitive markets in the world. So let's get right into it. All right, so picture this. You're running a business, maybe you're an investor, or you've got a killer startup idea, and you need a space, a physical home for your company. Sounds pretty fundamental, right? But it's often way more complicated than it seems. And that's especially true in a place like central London. I mean, the stakes are incredibly high. The whole process can just feel, well, stressful and completely unpredictable. And it doesn't matter if you're juggling a massive property portfolio or you literally just need two desks. That anxiety is pretty much universal. So, to really get our heads around this, here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll look at the unique challenge of the London market. Then, we'll dive into a whole new philosophy for agents. After that, we'll walk through a practical three-step approach, check out the specialized tools they use, and finally, we'll see why having deep local knowledge is, frankly, an absolute game changer. Okay, so first up, the Central London Challenge. And let me tell you, this is about so much more than just finding four walls and a door. And here's the thing that really stands out. This need is totally universal. It doesn't matter if you're a giant corporation or a tiny two-person startup. At the end of the day, you're looking for the exact same three things: real expertise, total transparency, and a team that is 100% dedicated to making you successful. That shared need is what's fueling this massive shift in how the very best agents are thinking about their jobs. It's a completely different approach. Let's take a look. This quote, man, it just nails it. The modern agent isn't trying to be a classic salesperson anymore. That old model is out. Instead, they see their job as three different roles rolled into one. They're a marketer who knows how to make a property shine, a listener who actually hears what a client needs, and a connector who brings the right people and places together. And this chart just lays it out so clearly. The old way, it was all about the sales spiel. The modern way is driven by facts and a solid strategy. The old way involved asking a bunch of generic questions. The new way? It's all founded on deep, active listening. And this is the big one. It's a move away from just pushing whatever property is available to making connections that actually make sense. Okay, so that's the big idea, the philosophy. But talk is cheap, right? How does this actually work in the real world? Well, this next part breaks it down into a really clear, actionable process. It all boils down to these three pillars. And you can see how they line up perfectly with that philosophy of being a marketer, a listener, and a connector. But the real magic, the secret sauce, is in how these steps are actually carried out. So first, let's talk about marketing. In a place like Marylebone, you're dealing with a really sophisticated audience. They are not going to be swayed by fluff. They want to see high-quality, stimulating visuals and cold, hard facts. So this means you have to invest in things like professional photography and create marketing materials that actually cut through all the noise out there. Okay, step 2, deep listening. And we're not just talking about getting the budget and the square footage right. It's about really getting to know the client and their business on a human level. I mean, how else are you going to find a neighborhood, let alone a specific building, that's going to be the perfect fit for their company culture and their long-term goals? And finally, we have connections. You know the saying, it's all about who you know? Well, it's true. A modern agent taps into this huge network, in this case, one that covers the medical world, luxury retail, private equity, and they use those connections to manage expectations and ultimately get the absolute best result for their client. All right, now it's time to open up the toolkit. This is where we get to see how that whole people-first philosophy gets translated into a whole suite of actual, tangible services. So the services really fall into three main buckets. You've got your core stuff like sales and lettings. Then there's the high-level capital markets and investment work. And finally, you have professional advisory and management. Think valuations, rent reviews, that kind of thing. Let's look at a concrete example. A bespoke office search isn't just about getting an email with a generic list of what's available. No way. It's a completely tailored process. It's about finding everything from a super prestigious address in a classic Georgian townhouse to a slick, modern corporate HQ. And it's all based on that deep listening we were just talking about. Or check this out for an even more specialized example. Finding a space for a medical practice, that requires some serious niche expertise. You have to know all about the specific D1 property class rules and have real connections in world-famous hubs like the Harley Street medical area. This is where a true specialist earns their keep. And that brings us to our last and I think most critical point. The incredible power of local expertise. In a city like London, which is really just a collection of distinct little villages, a one-size-fits-all approach just doesn't fly. It falls flat every time. I mean, just think about a place like Marylebone. It's got this totally unique character, right? On one hand, it's got this charming luxury village vibe, and on the other, it's a global center for medicine. You have to understand that dual identity inside and out to be effective there. You've got to know the landlords, the businesses, the whole rhythm of the streets. So when you work with a true local specialist, this is what you get. These are the 4 key advantages. First, you get their insane in-depth knowledge of that specific market. Second, you get access to the landlords, the real decision makers. Third, you get the kind of discretion that can unlock those amazing off-market opportunities nobody else knows about. And it all leads to the 4th point. They secure the absolute best possible terms for you. And that really brings us right back to this central idea. The building itself, the physical property, that's just one piece of the puzzle. The full story includes the strategy, the negotiation, the timing, and that whole network of people that makes it all click into place. So I'll leave you with this question to think about. When it comes to your company's next big move, what's really more important? The property itself? Or the expertise, the dedication, and the connections of the people who can actually get you there? Thanks so much for tuning in.